flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there's normally 5 of us. One for sure isn't coming, but this guy right here is on his way, so I'm going to read real slow to this opening thing. And if you need a little snooze, go for it. Well, that didn't get recorded, huh? That's okay. This is the meeting of the Morrison County Board of Adjustment. The board is made up of citizens from the 5 commissioner districts of the county. The purpose of this board is to review applications of property owners for relief from the strictest interpretation of the county ordinances. Our guidelines are established in state statutes, chapter 394.27, subsection 7. The decision made by this board is the result of whether or not a practical difficulty has been determined. If the board determines there is a practical difficulty, we then review the guidelines in the form of 6 criteria questions that are answered at the end of the applicant's request. A final decision is then made. Each request is evaluated on its own unique practical difficulty. Variances are granted to the land, not to the landowner. This board may, in addition, impose conditions in the granting of variances to ensure compliance. After your public hearing is complete, you may leave if you wish. We have 2 items on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is Matthew Faust, 33203 East Chamina Drive, Motley. After the fact application for a variance to add on to a non-conforming structure and place a septic within the setback of the lake located in lots 11 and 12 of Deering Bay lots, Scandi Valley Township. If the applicants would come forward and get close to a microphone, bring it around in front of you and state your name for the record.
I am Matthew Faust.
My name is Jordan Tuma.
Thank you. All right. We're ready for the findings of fact, huh?
Or the staff report.
The staff report, all the above.
You'll get the findings of fact after.
Oh, I've been at this too long.
All right. So this is, again, an after-the-fact variance request to keep the expansion of the non-conforming structure and variance to encroach on setback from the lake with a septic system. The ordinance references for this is section 301, 301.6, 706.1, 706.3. Here's a plat map of Scandi Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the application received from the applicant. And then a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And then here is an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. And then also some oblique imagery. And then here are some site photos taken at the viewing. Again, the property is in section 16 of Scandi Valley Township. It's on Lake Chamina, which is a general development lake. It is a non-conforming single lot, which means it's less than 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. This property is 140 feet wide and 24,057 square feet. According to the assessor's records, the 672 square foot dwelling with a 484 square foot attached garage was built in 1970. The property was deeded to the applicant in 2019. According to the survey, the closest point of the dwelling to the lake is 52.5 feet. The zoning history on the property includes in 2019, there was a permit to replace riprap. In 2020, there was a violation for unpermitted fill. 2021, there was an after-the-fact permit for placement of 70 cubic yards of fill and 20 cubic yards of topsoil to elevate a portion of the property above the high water. Included filling of wetland. This did include filling of wetlands, and that was allowed under de minimis from Soil and Water Conservation District. In August 2021, there was an incomplete application submitted to replace the existing foundation and install a septic system in lieu of a septic compliance inspection. That permit was not issued due to no septic design and fees, and the property owner was notified. In April of 2022, the property owner applied for a permit to replace the deck and install a septic system. The field check for this permit revealed the August 2021 project had been completed without permitting and outside of the scope of what was identified within the application. So here are photographs of before, or the existing condition. And then here is after. A stop work order and first notice of violation was issued. At the time of application for the foundation work, the Lake Chamina and Crookneck Lake Flood Protection Ordinance was in effect. This ordinance allowed for flood proofing of non-conforming structures without the need for a variance. Several methods of flood proofing were allowed, but required comprehensive plans. Since the permit was proposing simple replacement of the existing foundation, this project did not fall under the provisions of the temporary ordinance. The applicant is requesting two variances. The first is an after-the-fact variance to keep the basement replacement as is, and the second is a variance to place a septic system 40 feet from the lake, which is a 10-foot encroachment. A survey of the site was completed. The lowest floor elevation meets the floodplain requirements. However, since the structure was elevated on fill, there must be a 15-foot perimeter around the house at that same grade. Further topographic changes must be made to meet the standard, and these will reach into the shore impact zone. The impervious surface calculation is 16.99%, and 25% impervious surface is allowed. At the development review team meeting, the staff discussed the following with the applicant. The permit from August 2020 was not issued because it was incomplete. Decisions made in the field to bring entire basement above grade. House was moved, existing basement filled with sand. Basement was reconstructed on 3 feet of fill, then existing home was set on top. No elevations were shot, and at that time they were unsure if the final grade met the floodplain standards, and then they were going to survey. 15-foot perimeter at required grade is needed to meet floodplain standards. Soil and Water Conservation District said they needed to go back on site to evaluate the impacts to the wetland with the new grading work and whether runoff to the wetland is an issue. With the topographic changes undertaken on the site, a stormwater plan must be developed, and the proposed replacement septic drain field does not meet the 50-foot setback from the lake, and that would need a variance to install it in the proposed location. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2, shoreline development, goal D1, and then the applicable comprehensive water plan goals and objectives is the surface water goal, objective B, land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 73 notices were sent and no comment was received prior to the public hearing. And then here you're finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Does the applicant have anything to add at this point?
Not a lot. I also have like a septic currently on the property. So the reasoning for the new septic would be to actually further it from the wetland or lake or what have you. So it would actually be helping the wetlands, in my opinion, a little bit better. Yeah, kind of went about it to get a permit initially to just replace the basement and put it on drain tile. And then kind of going through the process, I was in contact with Amy's department, I guess, in going through there, and there was a little bit of miscommunication on, I was kind of allowed to do that, but I wasn't really aware of all the things that were required, and wasn't aware of, that I should have said, hey, maybe you should have take that application back and re-update and fill in a new one, per se.
Okay, thank you. Bottom line is you didn't ever have a permit in hand.
Yeah, yep, I did not. I thought, so I had that permit, and I guess the thing that I was lacking was the septic payment they had like the septic drawing, but the payment was never sent, and the contractor that I had hired to do that was, to send in like the drawing and payment, and I thought he had done that, and I thought everything was kind of squared away with it. And, it turns out I hadn't heard anything back, and then I had gotten a call actually from, Darren, the shoreland specialist, and he asked me, you know, wait, hey, are you gonna do anything with this permit? I got this outstanding pending permit, and I was like, well, I thought I was good, you know, I thought we were okay to do the work, and he's like, no, and then he's like, you're gonna wanna send in your, you know, septic, payment and, plan. They had the drawing on file at that time.
Okay, thank you. So Amy, lots of material in the staff report. What variances are being requested today?
I will get back to that slide, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, these are the two variances. The first one is an after-the-fact variance, and that is to keep the housework, elevating the basement above grade. And then the second one is, because the work hasn't been done yet, it's not an after-the-fact, and that's the variance to place a septic system 40 feet from the lake. So those are the two requests that you have in front of you tonight.
So the house, is that an expansion of a nonconformity?
At this point, yes, it is.
Okay, and how did that become an expansion? It seems like it was just lifted up.
Yep. So because of the way the nonconformity law is written, any increase in height is considered expansion of a nonconforming structure. So when that basement that was below grade, when that work came above grade and resulted in an overall increase in overall height, that's what drives the need for the variance.
Okay.
Mr.
After the
Chair,
fact.
to elaborate a little bit on that, because it's kind of confusing.
Yeah.
And they were, I heard remarks about being shot and knowing, you know, shot, I imagine, with the transit.
Who got shot?
With a transit to see what was above grade, because as
Nope, that,
this whole floodplain,
Yeah.
this Protection Act, and you see what was going on in Chamina, I think we've seen a bit of that going on. How far above grade, because it's very confusing to me.
absolutely. So I'll give you an education on all of it. So for a period of 2 years, we had an ordinance in place that covered just the shoreland areas of Lake Chamina and Crookneck Lake. And that allowed for people to elevate their structures, move their structures, and make some of those improvements, even though they were non-conforming and would continue to be non-conforming without the need for a variance. And that was done in concert with the blessing of the DNR in order to do that. Within that ordinance, it laid out many ways that could be done. It also laid out many performance standards that needed to be undertaken. Because when we change topography, when we change all of that, of course, we're always changing the way the water moves on the property. And if someone undertook a project, we needed to be assured that we weren't moving water to burden someone else or to burden public infrastructure. So one of the methods that was allowed is just elevating the structure. So essentially bringing that basement up to grade. That would be one of them. The other one would be elevating on stem, on pilings or on stem foundations and all of that. The other one would be to elevate on fill. One or the other, okay? So had this project could have been permitted either on fill or elevating the structure, but not both. And that would have been hashed out, and there would have been some stormwater plans, and there would have been elevation shot, And we would have made sure that the resulting elevation of the lowest floor was going to meet the base flood elevation that is proposed for that water body when the FEMA maps come into play. So because the scope of that project was not identified for any of that, we did not apply that ordinance to that project because it was a simple replacement of exactly what they have, which we applied the existing ordinance. When we fast forward to when we're made aware that this work has been done, that ordinance has now sunsetted, and so that's why we're in the variance situation that we're in. When it comes to the elevations, because during construction elevations were not shot, it's in the applicant's best interest to be sure that if this dwelling is going to stay where it is, that it meets that requirement, because otherwise it will have been for naught, because when that floodplain regulation goes into effect on Chamina and they're not meeting that, they're still going to have to carry flood insurance. So because elevations were not shot, that was our suggestion to the applicant, to be sure that the lowest floor now is at least 1 foot above that set base flood elevation that FEMA has set for Lake Chamina. And because it has been elevated on fill, because that's the technique, then FEMA has the requirement that you do that in a 15-foot radius around the house. So there is more grading work that is going to need to be done to meet that, because that is what is elevating that lowest floor above the base flood elevation, and that must extend 15 feet around. Make sense?
Thank you very much. It was a good education, I think, for all of us.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Clint.
did anybody measure? It looked like it was 15 feet to me.
No, we have not seen any grading plans. We haven't seen anything. I think we're not concentrating on that right now. Number one, the grade and fill is not under your purview. It's just an informational thing for you to know that there may be more grading work that needs to be done, so you're aware. The other thing is if this dwelling is granted, then we'll dig into the stormwater plan and some of these other things that need to go along with that. And so that's why we've just said, there's still a stop work order on that. And so no one's doing anything on
Okay, so
there.
some of them things, if we we put them as conditions, right?
Well, that's a FEMA requirement, so it's really, as far as
So
for
like the
condition, what do you mean?
like the stormwater thing and all
Yes,
that,
I
the things that we would have made them if they come
Yes,
in.
I would strongly encourage that you require that if you're looking at granting this.
Thank you. And that 15-foot of required grade is within the shore impact zone by 12 and a half feet about. Is that over-the-counter permittable?
Yes, it is with stormwater plans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the expansion of a nonconformity is the question,
That's correct.
okay? The after-the-fact question.
Correct. So you're
And-
gonna have really two things to look at here. You're gonna have the expansion of the nonconforming structure, and then if you answer all of those questions in the affirmative, then you're gonna move on to the after-the-fact criteria just for the home. The other part, the septic, is just on the front end.
Okay. And we're instructed to look at after-the-fact variances as if they were a request for a variance, not
On your first set
shaded
of,
by the
on
after-the-fact.
your first set of criteria questions, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay. So that's what we'll do.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair,
this is coming to us, put your blinders on, this is coming to us fresh. Would we have permitted this action that the applicant has bringing forward to us today? Would we have permitted that? So,
Mr.
conversation
Chair.
along that line, go ahead.
I have a question on the sewer part of it. Maybe for the applicant. So you said you had a sewer system there already. It's
where is that located? On the map here, it's kinda, is that the south side of the house, is that where it is, or that's where you're proposing the new one?
Correct, yeah, it would be just a little bit, towards the photographer's, way of that black trailer there.
Okay. That's where the
That's
one is now?
where the existing
Okay.
one is, fairly close to that, swamp, which they, had located a ordinary high water for.
Okay, and then the new one you'd wanna
Would
go
be,
where?
20 foot.
Closer
off of
to the house?
Building, it has to be 20 feet away from the house, so it would be 40 feet from, that ordinary high mark of that
Okay.
wetland, so essentially it would be,
In between the one you have now and the house?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, you had made made a comment about what your septic design, you would be moving it even closer. Do you still need that 10-foot setback on this new design?
correct, yes. With the new design, I would need the 10-foot setback. Otherwise, I guess there's an option to reuse under a type 3, my old drain field and elevate it. I just figured it would ideally work out better being away from that wetland some.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Perhaps we could look at the site pictures again, Amy. This is the, well, the construction area, parking area.
That's what I have for site photos from the viewing, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, you don't have that one down by the shoreline where that's been muddied up down there in the shoreline area?
I don't have a picture of the shoreline other than some oblique imagery here.
Okay. No, the site viewing photos will be fine. Also, for the record, we should put down that as of on the 10th, last Friday, Marv, myself, Brent, and Amy were on the site to view. Clint, you viewed
This afternoon.
this afternoon, and Brent, I'm not, oh yeah, he was with us on Friday, yep. Okay, looking at these pictures and being on the site, you realize that as of today, you have 100% impervious surface on your property.
Correct.
I mean, there's a little tuft of grass, lake shore side, and further to the lake shore, you've got a rutted up, I don't know what happened there, that's also impervious. So, and of course the house, the roof, you get a little bit there. So, yeah, you have some serious problems today and no plan to contain those problems at this point, which would have been required if the permitting process had gone the way it should have. So hard to ignore after the fact thoughts, but at the same time, we need to look at this as if it were a request today. Also at the site, you told us that, and I think it's right in the application, that the house was moved to the south, and then the foundation was dug. And, and if that would have been brought up to us in a variance request, I doubt if we would have allowed you to stay 53 feet from the lake in that process. Try to get that 15 feet of grade elevation, at least beyond the shore impact zone. So that's going to be a difficult question for us to answer. How would we have looked at that if you would have brought that forward to us? House already moved off, you could have put foundation anywhere. So with that thought in mind, any other questions? I think we have some experts out in the audience maybe that might be helpful. Go ahead, Clint.
Just a comment, Dave, on that. I kind of thought the same thing, in the beginning. Once I looked at it, you move that, yeah, the house would be out of the shore impact zone, but then the sewer wouldn't be. So it's a catch-22. I had the same thought you did, but then when I looked at it, it's like it ain't all gonna fit, so I don't know. Just a comment.
Some of these properties, only a holding tank works, so. Okay, anybody else on the board? Do we want public input?
Can I add
Go ahead.
that once? If you actually look at the, Fessler Land Surveying Survey, I'm actually kind of pinched there. I have swamp, to the,
Is this
to the
what you're
west.
looking at?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
See, if you look at that little triangle piece, that's technically the only buildable envelope on that property. The way I
Oh,
understand
yeah,
it, so
to meet
it's
the
not like it,
75
yeah.
foot.
So
Yeah.
moving it to the south more actually, then I almost encroach on the wetland as well with the house even, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's not much of a building envelope there, but
No.
at the same time, there are some setbacks that are less important than others, and
Sure.
and all the work you did in the shore impact zone is what I'm concerned with today, that we would have very much questioned at the time of, if it would have been a normal application. So, okay, with that in mind, is there anybody out in the audience that would like to come forward and
The microphone is over there.
And the microphone is on that nice brown chair over by the door. So, Shannon, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Wetstein. I'm the district manager with the Morrison Stormwater Conservation District. And just wanted to share with you guys, our office has been out on this site and reviewed this at different points here. This site, zooming out, I don't know, Amy, if you've got another beacon image of this property might help.
I can get one. Give me just a
Okay,
moment.
because this is at the end of the road, and if I'm not mistaken, your neighboring property is your folks? And they've been on the lake for quite some time? Okay, good afternoon. So this parcel is now the very last one on this. And as you can see, you've got lake on one side, you've got wetland on the other two sides, and so it's a very marginal or restricted site for building expansion, because you're being pressed on setbacks from all sides. So the first time that we reviewed this property was for an after-the-fact wetland fill, and it was in the back portion of the lot, not on the lakeside, and that was due to water levels, groundwaters coming up, and kind of that water encroaching. After the fact, when we received those, it was in the middle of winter. If it isn't over what we call the de minimis, which is the legal limit, a lot of times we do permit those. Now, again, sequencing, can it be avoided? Can it be minimized? On after the facts, typically, we just do permit them. And, completely avoidable fill for the record, but it was placed, and we did allow for some topsoil on top of that, because once the fill's already there, they're underneath, their legal amount adding up is not an issue. But so, again, an after-the-fact situation with a property owner that probably has some experience for lakeshore living, just giving you a little bit of a hard time, because a lot of times we deal with people that have never lived on lakeshore before, and they're running into, oh, whoops, I didn't know, About 38 years ago. Yep. So then we did have the DRT meeting, and it was identified that there may be some later grading and filling. So we did go out there again just to see what was going on, how much area there would be, what sort of stormwater considerations could be made. Obviously, with this property, you don't have houses on both sides, so stormwater can be addressed on the property and not affecting the neighboring property. So in the packet there, it was kind of pointed out gutters and pushing water one direction. But, the concerns that, Mr. Stish had with the state is pretty dismal. Obviously, there's been a lot of gravel, and the whole front is no longer vegetated. And again, I'm just calling out bad behavior because knowing what, is expected in shoreline. So our office has been involved kind of again after the fact, as you guys have been. Moving forward, any additional grade and fill, they would be able to meet setback if they did extend, and that's, again, like Amy pointed out, for another day, but the 15-foot from the foundation would be able to meet without filling in additional wetlands. But yeah, this is just a tough site, and getting it after puts you guys in a spot. Because again, would you consider it and moving a little bit closer to the lake to put in what you want?
Shannon, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Usually, I don't know if you can answer this, usually the DNR has consequences for filling in wetlands, and they make them redevelop or put dollars towards that. It sounded like wetlands were filled in here. Are there consequences that could be result of this?
It's a good question. At this point, there won't be any consequences. They did apply for an after the fact. We did grant it. It was still within their legal amount of fill that was placed. If they had been any closer to the lake, it would have been a violation because they would have been limited to 20 square feet. They were just far enough back because the fill was in the further part of the property, that they did not have to remove it. The DNR did not issue a fine on this one.
Okay, thank you. And I want to make a comment, is swamps, meadows, whatever, are filtering systems, and they're quite crucial. And I think it's finally coming to people's attention, how important they are.
And I would agree, especially, when you have places like Lake Chamina, everyone is wanting to fill in low areas, but that essentially creates a problem for the next person, and it's definitely part of the reason that Chamina is facing some of the issues that they're facing right now, is because lowlands were filled in the past, or properties were built where they should not have been. So
Before you go, Shannon, Amy, could you zoom in on that? And I think it's interesting to look at, we could look at the topography, but to the right is your father's home,
Correct.
and that's uphill from you. And to the left is that wetland area, which is DNR property, am I correct, Shannon or Amy?
That's state of Minnesota.
yeah, so that's what's unique about this parcel, is that he was saying ordinary high, so the lake actually kind of wraps around here. So instead of just being swamp, it actually is still part of the lake.
Yeah, there's a physical connection right here. So this is actually, so we have a transition, this is actually lake, and then at some point at elevation, then we transition from lake to wetland.
Yeah, and looking at the contours there and being on the site, water does kind of naturally flow to the left towards the wetlands across their property. And also, before you go, could we look at your surveyor's drawing too on this? Yeah, yeah. Oh, do you have one? Oh, yeah, that has all his little blue lines in it. Sure it does. I don't know if you can see that very well or not. But he's suggesting here, along with the survey, that water can be directed, on the lake side of the house, towards the lake, and then down towards the wetland, and on the road side of the house could be directed the other way toward the wetlands. And of course, if that was across grass or, some vegetation, the more vegetation the better, I would guess that could work. It seemed like from the site that seemed like a possibility. Does that seem like a logical and probable watershed plan that could be developed?
Yeah, talking with our technician that was out on site, there are easy ways to make sure that roof runoff and from the impervious area isn't going directly into the lake. They could mitigate that to go away and towards the wetlands in the back.
If we were to move forward with this, would an engineered stormwater plan be the best way to go on that? So that it could be actually executed and monitored and seen if it's done correctly?
I would say on this site, and Amy, you can weigh in, I don't think it would require an engineered design necessarily. Maybe that would be a requirement for the 15-foot fill around the building. But as far as the stormwater plan, I do think that's something that the landowner could present and could be reviewed by our office. We'd be happy to. And then once it was installed or executed, we could go out and verify, or the shoreline specialist could verify at that time that it was complete.
Okay, along with the correct vegetation on it?
Definitely, yes. Obviously, there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to vegetation.
There's only one way but up.
Yeah.
Also, the applicant stated that your office had already made some suggestions along the wetland for shrubs and whatever. I don't know if that's a formal thing or just an offhanded comment, but you seem to have discussed it with them.
Yeah, and typically when we go out on site, we are always available for technical assistance, and that would have been given to the landowner, but it wouldn't have been a formal decree that it needed to be. We always give suggestions to landowners, especially in shoreline, to do best management practices, but obviously, unless they're under some sort of condition to do otherwise, they're free to make the best choice.
Okay, yeah, thanks. We might have some more questions.
Thank you.
Is there any other public input at this time? Any other public input? I'll ask one more time, then we'll close the meeting to public input. Any other public input? As there is none, we'll close the meeting to public input and we'll proceed. Are you
Mr.
ready?
Chair, I got a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Amy, if you
Lynn?
could go back to the picture we just had, please. Okay, the first thing is, everybody's with this fill and all this, the end game. Let's say everything stayed the same, what's your end? Is it gonna be all grass,
Yeah, so the house is pictured there. In front of the garage, the driveway loops up. It's existing going up the hill. It's a easement I have from my dad to get onto my property. Mike, the technician that was out from the office, we proposed a native plant buffer in this corner in the green. And I thought that was a great idea. I'd also like to plant a couple trees with like some tall native grass there. I've lost almost all my trees on that piece of property. And then everywhere, other than that would be, grass. With the exception of around the house, I would probably do like 2 feet of rock, just for landscape purpose or, so you're not cutting grass up against the home per se.
So then here we got this crown and grade on this picture. So that's kind of what you're proposing. You'd have that so the water on the south side of the house can't get to the lake. It would go to the south. And then on the north side of that crown, that water would maybe go west, is what?
Correct, yep.
Yeah.
And that crown will be grass as well. It's just be a little bit of a higher area there where it would keep it to the south, running to the wetland. And we actually do have a slight crown along the riprap on the north side of the property that actually keeps the water from rushing to the lake. So by the arrows, it actually runs out to the west a bit more.
So then, let's say on the northwest corner of this, kind of where that crown was, wasn't there before any of this work, wasn't that kind of a little knob there anyways?
Yes, it's still, they're still actually kind of natural crowns.
I serviced this place for 16 years in my previous employment. So the reason I asked was what his plan was when he was done. That whole place was grass, and it already was kind of naturally protected, from the lake. And then the flow is natural there, so I don't see where it'd be too much different to fix it back that way. That's why I'm asking if you're putting it all in the grass or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's my plan, yeah.
Okay. I think that's what I had for now. Okay, I'm good.
All right. Anything else? Ready for the questions?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead. Yes, Amy?
how would you like to handle this? Do you want to go through them on the front end? Do you want to consider both together on the initial ones? And then if you answer them all in the affirmative, then you move on just for the after the fact portion to the after the fact criteria? Or would you like to separate those votes altogether?
Guys, by both, you mean the sewer system and the,
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
I'm thinking we should do it all together, and the reason why is if we don't allow the building, he ain't gonna need the septic, or unless, so, I don't know. That's just my opinion, and you may have a different one.
yeah,
Do it
together
together?
sounds
Okay.
fine. I don't know, do you have an exact proposal of, that you'll hold them to? I'm not sure. He's kind of
For-
thrown them around for the sewer system. I think when we were there at the site, it was kind of the middle of the yard sort of area there. And then it was towards the wetlands. Then you thought maybe even a holding tank if nothing else worked. Do you have something concrete?
Mr. Chair, we do have a design on file, but after looking at the site, I'm hard pressed to say that could be a type 1 system because of the disturbance of the soils there. So I wouldn't worry for you. Don't worry about the design. What you would want to look at is, are you okay with the location being
10
within?
feet closer.
Correct.
No matter
And
where it is, 10 feet closer.
Exactly, and then we would work with the designer and the property owner on if it's a type 1 or a type 3. And if the variance is granted, then that would be the closest that could be to the lake.
Okay. Right. That good? All right, the first criteria question is the request in harmony with general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinances and Comprehensive Plan? Typically, we go through this and just give our thoughts on it. Is it in harmony, and why or why not? And then after we've gone through all of the questions and probably considered conditions all the way through, then we would come back and actually yes or no vote. So that's the way we'll be doing it again today. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan. Marv, do you want to start out?
I'll try. I believe it is, and the reason why, this is, with this Chamina flood protection ordinance that was put in, it kind of opens up a whole new animal. I know it's different. If this were on Alec Fish Trap, I don't believe it would be. And because of this, I'm saying it is. And it is out of shore impact, which is good, even though there was work done in the shore impact zone. But with the guidance of soil and water, what needs to happen, and what the landowner is willing to do, does fall into comprehensive plan. One remark I also will make, at the site, the only erosion I seen was coming from his father's driveway down. Otherwise, there didn't appear to be any erosion going to the lake. And then with the water being directed towards the swampy area to be filtered and away from the lake, I think that also brings it into comprehensive plan. And another remark I will make is 73 notices were sent out and no negative remarks were said about it.
Okay, again, looking at this as if it were just a proposal and not after the fact, well, I think this probably, if it would have been done correctly, probably would never have come before this board. You would have pursued it under the old that 2-year program and probably done it right and probably had all of your ducks in a row. If you kind of have a history of kind of not doing it the right way, like it or not. It's right here in black and white. I would assume by now that probably will never happen again. Okay, enough after the fact. Blah, blah, blah. But anyway, 52.5 feet from the lake. It's out of the shore impact zone. And again, every shore impact zone is different. I mean, sometimes 100 feet is all shore impact zone. In reality, sometimes it's 20 feet, 30 feet. The magic of this property is that it does, as Clint pointed out, it does have a natural waterway on both sides. It probably did it naturally on its own. And before all this big ugly hit with no vegetation and too much fill here and there and everywhere, and we don't even know what it looked like at the beginning. Anyway, before then it worked. And it looks like it could still work, as Shannon pointed out, probably something that the two offices could agree upon. I'd like to see an engineer do it just because it should cost you something more than that. But they're gracious enough to do this for you. So with the plan that they approve of and can enforce and can inspect regularly, I think it does meet the purposes intent. Now, in the staff report, there's applicable comprehensive land use plan goals. Natural resources and open spaces. Obviously, they've been insulted to quite a degree, but they can be restored, I think. There's been no erosion in the lake. That's a good thing. No erosion towards the wetlands that I could see. But that can all be greened up, and this property can look good again. Work to ensure development within the county's watersheds. County's watersheds are done in a thoughtful and deliberate manner, not an impulsive manner. That would be going through the appropriate offices. We're here now. And protect and enhance the quality of surface waters. Then land use and development goal, ensure that land use decisions for shoreline development and plat development take environmental impacts into consideration. Enhance natural habitat communities wherever possible. Now, you had stated you're going to clean up all that block, that construction materials, that old dock, everything that's in that wetland area. property you don't even own probably, but are remnants of your family's history there. So you will be cleaning that up. I think that needs to be a condition, that whole wetland area restored with vegetation. So a vegetation plan, a stormwater plan, and a cleanup. Those would be the conditions that allow me to say that, yes, long answer to question number one, that it is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the land use ordinance and comp plan.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just want to remind you that you're also voting not just on the home, but on the septic, so make sure that you're addressing both in your answers.
Sure. Yep. Yep, and properly designed septic, I'm assuming it's been brought forward, so I'm assuming it will meet purposes and intent. Somewhere in this application, there was something about a deck. There was a deck on the house?
Correct. Let me get back to that original picture. There was a deck on the front of the house. And let me get that.
And that was grandfathered in at one time, but with this.
There would have been a
But with
replacement.
this expansion of a
There would
nonconformity.
have been a
it's-
replacement right. It is going to look different because it is going to be, let me find the picture and then that's easier
Yeah,
for me to.
the applicant, what size was the deck?
The deck was a 8x14. I proposed to replace the 8x14. Obviously the stairs.
Are you okay with just a landing outside the door? Versus a deck? That's what I would propose as a condition, that no deck would be
It
replaced.
has like a
Patio door.
patio door up there and.
Yeah,
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
so this, on your screen, that's the deck that was there. What would need to be happening and what they were proposing, I believe, and clarify if I'm wrong, whoops, excuse me, let me just grab that again, is you're wanting to do the deck on that upper portion?
Yes, correct.
yeah. That would be a condition that I would have to have, no deck on that property. You've expanded your dwelling. Yeah, that would be a very imposing structure on a dwelling that's already too close to the lake and, yeah,
Can I?
I don't know what the others think, but that would
add-
be
Mr. Chair,
my
by
thoughts on it.
that remark, then, he obviously could remove that patio door and, and just put windows or whatever like that, if it had to.
Mr. Chair, he's allowed a landing, so he can have a 32 square foot landing with
On the
stairs.
ground level.
He can have it on the upper.
Oh, you can't.
To get out of that, he can have a 32 square foot landing with stairs to go down. So that is something that he could have. Anything larger is considered a deck, but that's what he would be
Okay.
allowed.
Anything that's permittable through.
Correct.
Through land services, but not the replacement deck.
Okay.
You guys okay with that?
I disagree.
Okay. All right, your turn, Clint.
On what part?
We're still on question number one.
Okay, so on question one, and probably a couple other ones on here, the condition I'd like to see would be the stormwater plan. Stormwater plan, when you put that in, it probably ain't gonna detail a lot because what the applicant said they're gonna do is get it back as close to where it originally was. It'll be modified some because of the backfill and things like that. The stormwater plan would ensure that that's done properly. And then with the septic system getting moved just a little bit, I don't think it's gonna change really the imprint of it. It's just in a different location. But that would tie into that stormwater plan. I think it just makes me vote a lot better for some of the other questions also. So I guess that's what my condition would be.
Okay. Thank you. Ready for question number two? Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? I'll start out on that one. Oh, what did I have in my notes? Yeah, with the conditions that, I think that it is a reasonable use of the property. It will be, water will be handled properly. Yeah, it's beyond the shore impact zone. Yeah, it'll be used the same as it was before for, for lake home purposes, so. All right, Clint
I have nothing to add to that one.
and Marv.
Something I will add, we're thinking about the septic. The only other alternative he really has is a holding tank there. And here, as we traveled back there, that road isn't the greatest in some of the areas. And I'm thinking by allowing a septic and one that would be approved septic, other than the 10-foot setback, would be better than the holding tank, because you're going to have a truck come back there a few times a year, maybe quite a few times a year, and pumping this tank. And on that road going to there, it would just create more issues. So I think it would be better having a well-designed septic system than doing that. And as far as the conditions we talked about with soil and water, with a water flow plan, with that, I think it's reasonable.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
I believe it will. Driving up and down that road, actually, when you start out on that road, way in the beginning, I mean, we look at a lot of them houses that are in there, they're not conforming lots. They're as small as his. And there's way bigger footprint as far as buildings and stuff go. And I know it's a technicality when we talk that we're making this bigger because it come out of the ground. It's an expansion. To me, common sense don't tell me that. They had a basement in the ground, now it's above ground. It didn't change anything. This place is down in a hole, it's the end of the road. The only thing that's really changing is the basement's out of the ground. Once it gets back to its finished process with the grass and all that, it's kind of tucked in a corner. There's some trees. I know there was more before. They lost some. Being way down on the end of the road, some of the other places that are along that road, it definitely maintains the essential character of the locality.
Marv?
Part of it, I look at a few things. Number one, it's under 25 feet, which meets the requirements there. And if you compare it to the neighbor property, which is parents like that, it's the roof line is definitely lower than the neighbor property. So it meets the essential character. Do the drive-by? Well, obviously, it does stand out right now because if it's white and whatever, you put the proper siding back and it'll blend in. And another part of this animal is you look on Lake Chamina, all the places that were in the lowland lifted up. So it will blend in with the rest of them that were lifted up. Otherwise, it would be a different situation here.
Mr. Chair, just add one thing about the sewer. There's a sewer there you didn't know. I had to ask where it was. The drain field, I should say. They're putting a new one in, this new one. You're not going to know the difference that it was moved from there to there, so it ain't going to change any of the essential character when it comes to the sewer part.
Yeah, it'll be on the roadside of the house, and, yeah. Yep, I agree, and like you had stated, it's the end property, so it gives it a feel of more property than he actually has with that marshy area there, so it'll be nice looking property. Number 4. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Marv?
Well, the problem was created by the water level coming up higher of Lake Chamina. if it wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't be here. They wouldn't have done what they have to do. So that makes it unique. And then where it's located makes it unique too, in a lower area there.
Yeah, I would just add that there was actually a special ordinance created just for these situations, even though we didn't quite follow it to the T, and ended up with an expansion and more fill than, all kinds of things. But anyway, there was a special ordinance that could have tackled this, and special ordinance did recognize the unique situation that Chamina and Crookneck are in, so. Both for, I mean, that's for the house more than the sewer, but I guess as far as the sewer goes, unique to the property are just the location of that wetland and relative to the shore impact zone. Clint, do you have anything to add?
Just that I agree with what you guys have stated, and then maybe the only thing is just the small building envelope that's on that property because of the being in that corner with the lowland, the lakes, how you get in there. The property's surrounded 3/4 either by lake or wetland, so.
Okay, anything else on number 4? And question number 5, I start out on that, is need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners. Well, if we were looking at after the fact, the reason we're here today is because of actions of the landowner, but in reality, it's about high water and Chamina and Crookneck and the special ordinance that where it was in place for 2 years to combat that problem. And so it is actions other than the landowner in the ideal world. Go ahead, Clint.
Yeah, just add, what you said, I agree with Dave. The only thing I'd maybe add, and it's just a personal thing, is if it was my property, I'd do the same thing. I'd raise it up. I don't want it's a big investment people have to elevate. I wouldn't want it flooded out either. I know there's protocols to follow and things we have to do, but I just think like Dave stated with the rising water of Chamina, I think that's probably the biggest factor of why we're even here today.
Go ahead, Marv.
I agree with both of you individuals have to state here, and I will reiterate that proper protocol. So as Dave stated earlier in his remarks, I hope, Matthew, you learned some lessons by this in life, and if you do anything in future, that will go through the proper steps, and that's huge.
Yeah, I'll second that kind of motion. Yeah, even though the things that have happened there have kind of insulted soil and water and land services, they've been gracious enough to be very helpful to you, and they would never hold that against you. No, me, no, I wouldn't. So does did we do number 6 yet? Were you talking about number 6? No. We haven't even said number 6 yet. Are we done with number 5? All right, number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Clint.
Oh, totally. He's just trying to save what he has. That's economics, but that's not what he did. He didn't try and do it cheap, so he ain't saving. But there is more to that. It's just something that has to be done. You need a sewer. If his isn't compliant, he needs to make sure he has a proper sewer system, especially being, like I said, jammed in a corner with 3/4 of his property surrounded by a wetland or a lake. I think with the rising waters, like I stated earlier, from Chamina, I think that has just as much factor as anything. I think he's just trying to save his investment. That has some economics to it, but the reason he had to do that was just because of the rising waters.
Okay. Marv?
Something I will also point out, I agree with Clint stated here. I was impressed when we came out to the site, he made sure he brought out the drawing and pointed out the direction of water and where it was going, and that it was gonna get filtered through the swamp. And after the fact, having some direction with soil and water and saying, okay, I can do this, we will do this, I will do what it takes. And that definitely involves much more than economics. Thinking about after the fact, these are the things I can do to preserve what I got and do the best to keep this property intact.
Yeah, the only thing I'd have to add to that would be that, of course, I'll have to throw another little after-the-fact jab in, and that costs you a couple $100 extra for an after-the-fact. So, and it might be costing you a little extra too, in all this, doing it the right way, but after the fact, so. But no, if you would have gone through all the right channels, it wouldn't have cost much different than today. So, and there are, no matter what the choices that were made, or what the setbacks would have been allowed. So are we ready to vote? Okay, I'm voting based on cleanup debris along in the wetland area, dock, all the building debris, restore that with some planting, have a stormwater and vegetation plan that's approved by Land Services and Soil and Water, and that the only deck you would be permitted would be what is over-the-counter permittable. That would be how I am voting. So, or anything else to add to that? Or?
Amy, were there any other conditions we talked about in that, or was that it totally?
Mr. Chair, what I had written down was the removal of the items from the wetlands, including the dock and the building debris, the vegetative plan, stormwater plan, and then the no placement of deck on the upper portion of the home. That's what I had written down. Unless I missed something.
But as stated, Land Services allows a landing there.
Correct. Yes, but that's not a deck. That's a landing. So.
Okay, and
Yes.
that would be 32 square feet, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. We ready to vote based on that? Okay, is the request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinances and Comprehensive Plan? Marv?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Marv?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Marv?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Okay, all the questions have been answered in the affirmative. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve this variance
Okay.
with the conditions.
Okay, for the expansions of the non-conforming structure and the septic within the setback of the lake.
That is correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, and we have 4 variances, is that correct, Amy? Conditions, I mean?
Very old.
Another hour. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, if there's no discussion, proceed to vote. All in favor say aye, all opposed say no. Marv?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Aye.
Motion carries. Good luck moving forward.
Mr.
We
Chair.
got the after the fact questions yet.
Mr. Chair. So,
No, oh, we do, don't we? That's
so
right.
We haven't done it.
now that you've answered this in the affirmative, now you have the after-the-fact criteria. The way the ordinance is written is these are discretionary. You may consider them. So at this point, you'd want to have some discussion as to whether or not you want to go through this criteria or not for the after-the-fact portion of this request.
Does the applicant have any say in the matter?
Nope, that would be you.
Just us, okay. I assume if you had a druther, you wouldn't go through these questions? Okay, I think we've probably hit on all these.
That, Mr. Chair, that's what I was gonna comment, is I think we pretty much covered these, reading through them in our discussions earlier.
I agree with you guys here. I totally agree. I think we had some pretty deep, strong discussions, how we felt over this and the importance of working with soil and water and correcting these issues that are out there.
Okay, then for the record, we've agreed to not review the after-the-fact questions. I think we're done. You can stay for the entertainment, or you can leave.
Thank you.
Going home, or to the lake, or?
Up to the lake.
Good luck with things and continue to work with soil and water and land service, everything you can. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Chamina Properties 2 LLC, Matthew Brown and Chris Porsche. Application for a variance to construct a dwelling within the Bluff impact zone located in Scandi Valley Township. If the applicants would come forward and get up close to a microphone and state your name for the records.
Hi, my name is Matt Brown.
Hi, I'm Chris Porsche.
Thank you. And the staff report. Thank
Yes,
you, Amy.
Mr. Chair. This is a variance request to construct a dwelling within the Bluff impact zone. This is located in Section 9 of Scandi Valley Township. The ordinance references for this is 706.1B and E. Here is a plat map of Scandi Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then some site drawings also provided by the applicant. Here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. And then some oblique imagery of the parcel. And then here's some shoreline views. This has a lot of shoreline, so there are several shots of the shoreline for this parcel. And then here are photographs taken at the site viewing. Again, the property is in Section 9 of Scandi Valley Township. It's on Chamina Lake, which is a general development lake. It is a conforming quad lot, which means it's at least 80,000 square feet and 340 feet wide. The property is 579.26 feet wide and 29.6 acres. This property is not currently developed. The property is for sale, and Mr. Brown and Mr. Porsche have entered into a purchase agreement contingent upon securing a variance. There is significant topography on this property, including bluff conditions. The applicant's plan is to split the property into 2 parcels, and each family will construct a cabin. The cabin on the west parcel will meet all setbacks. The cabin proposed on the east parcel is the focus of this variance request. And then here is the survey of the property. The applicant's plan is to split the property into 2 parcels, and each family will construct a cabin. Oh, no, I just already told you that, so I just want to tell you again. So, all right, and then here is a drawing of the proposed cabin on that east parcel within the Bluff impact zone. A small building envelope does exist between the 2 bluff areas on the property within the ravine. That is not considered a bluff, and it's highlighted in pink. The applicant is requesting a variance to construct that east dwelling within the Bluff impact zone. A shared septic system, well, lake access, and driveway are proposed. The applicant has been informed that a stormwater pollution prevention plan and a stabilization plan during and after construction is required for the driveway construction, and the applicant has engaged an engineering firm for this purpose. At the development review team meeting, staff discussed the following with the applicant. We discussed that 30-foot radius setback from the top of the bluff is required, that there's plans to split the property to build 2 cabins. One will meet setbacks, the other won't. It's a very large property, and that they must show reasons the remainder of the property cannot accommodate a dwelling, and that's due to the rolling topography. Shared septic, well, and driveway is planned. Easement will be recorded. The Board of Adjustment will want to see designs and renderings and detail on the approach to construction and dirt movement. And the DNR had stated they wanted to view the property if the request was moving forward. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2. Shoreland development, goal D1. The Morrison County comprehensive water plan goals and objectives is the surface water goal, objective B. Land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 46 notices were sent. There was 1 telephone call received prior to the public hearing. That was from David McDonald, and he stated that they should need to meet setbacks like everyone else, and he doesn't think that building near a bluff is a good idea. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Applicants have anything to add at this point?
Sure. I'll, and for sake of Mr. Catherine, I thank you for coming out and viewing it with us. I think a couple of the things we'll point out just as we get
Before you start, just for the record, Clint, you were out today also?
Okay.
And we were out,
Was when you guys are together, but
But they did take you through, see this.
no, I just walked, I found a trail.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, Dave was walking.
Dave was walking through, was packed down like a cow, and there's ribbons there, you know.
I always leave a ribbon behind me when I walk through.
We talked about the breadcrumbs, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, we were out on the 10th, Friday afternoon, and Clint was out today.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So I think the one thing we'd probably point out is the variance is under Chamina Properties LLC. That is the current owners, just to be clear. This is a personal, partnership here between a couple of us trying to build a cabin. I think it is a very unique property, as if you've walked it, you've seen. I think our proposed variance, not only, there's obviously a reason why we're here, right? It creates a more equitable situation between a couple of joint investors in terms of having a better place for both of us, I think, to create a building environment. I think, too, we talk a lot about the harmony of the neighborhood, right? I think this actually, rather than a front and back cabin scenario that would conform with the setbacks, this uniquely creates a more harmonious neighborhood, both to our neighbors, to each other, and I think even less visibility to the lake. And I think most importantly, and I'll leave it at last for the most, is we genuinely believe this is a more stable building spot for the sake of the environment. It's 70 feet roughly further back from the lake that we're trying to protect, and this is the unique characteristics of this particular property with these particular bluffs and how this particular lot rolls out. And so I think when we think about those 3 things, it's certainly a benefit to us, but we genuinely believe this is a benefit for the county, for the lake, for the harmony of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very amazing, beautiful property.
It's exciting, yeah.
You can see why you're attracted to it.
Yeah.
And thank you for all the information you provided and for the tour, and your realtor's as far as realtors go, he's a really good guy. No, sorry.
He's actually representing the seller, but he's been working with us and he's been great, so, yep.
Yep. Yeah, he did a very good job of helping you through that. So, with that in mind, any questions for the applicants at this point?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Clint.
maybe for Amy. So, how far back, so like Bluffs, is that just because of the lake? Or is that on any property that there's a bluff?
Bluffs are only in shoreland, and there's criteria that the property needs to meet in order to be called a bluff. So number one, it has to be in shoreland. Number two, it has to, the land has to drain towards the water body. 3, it has to rise at least 25 feet above the ordinary high water mark. And then also it has to have a grade of at least 30%. So all of those things need to be met in order to be called a bluff. And as a side note, I did, at 5:30 this evening, I did receive that graphic from the surveyor, kind of breaking that down in his analysis of that, so I can show that if you'd like. But yes, so that is, so bluffs are only in shoreland.
Okay, then how far does a bluff extend? Is there a set feet?
No.
Nope, it just, cause of the,
They're a very unique land feature, and so every bluff is different. Some properties might be entirely bluff, some might just have the front 30 feet.
well, this whole
So-
property's a bluff or a hole.
Well, no, because it doesn't drain towards the
Yeah.
water body. So when we go down, we're not draining towards the water body anymore. So then we move out of bluff conditions.
Okay, then one more. How much are we encroaching in for this is,
So the proposed
10
cabin, the proposed cabin is proposed to be completely within the bluff impact zone, so right at the top of the bluff. So we have the top of the bluff line, and then we have a 30-foot setback from it, and they're proposing to be
right on the edge, yep.
Correct, yes.
But it's on the back side of the bluff.
Well, it's on the
Well,
30-foot
it kinda
setback
comes
from
down,
the
yeah,
bluff.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Marv.
on that same topic, as I looked at this and I think we, as a board, we understand how sensitive the bluff zones are. And anyhow, I was thinking about this on the backside of where this second home cabin is, where it's such a sharp drop off over there, but that's not in bluff zone. Wondering if it was thought about some landscaping work being done. It would be a significant amount that would could be brought in like that, so it wouldn't be in the bluff zone. I know it would be at an expense, but then it wouldn't be in the bluff zone.
I'm sorry, I'm not following what you're asking.
Okay, so as we,
Maybe we need this graphic up there?
Yeah, let me, which one are you looking at, Marv?
well, the one that would be the easiest to understand, if you bring up the one that was handed out to us there.
You bet. Bless you. This one?
Correct.
Okay.
So as you look at, if I'm looking at it, directly at it, the one that would be in the bluff zone, if we move away from the lake, I know it's a sharp drop off, extremely
So, right in, back in here, Marvin?
backside over there.
Yep.
So it would be a significant amount of dirt work being done, but it would be out of the bluff zone, because it'd be water running away. Was that thought about also?
Are you asking me or are you asking the
You
applicant?
guys,
No, I don't think we've had that analysis. As we've talked, we've engaged engineering, we've engaged the excavator, both for the sake of the road and looking at some of this kind of stuff. And I know we walked towards it. I don't know if that's from a physics or engineering perspective. I mean, I suppose anything is possible, but it's pretty much a sheer drop in
It's
that
a-
direction. So I think it would be very difficult, and it would be, obviously then this comes down to, as we keep talking about alternatives, the front-back alternative would probably win out if we had to push it further down the back bluff. I guess I would personally be concerned about the viability of that structure. And even though we're protecting the lake, I don't know about, I guess I'm not sure what the runoff situation would be, and we're here to protect the lake, but it would obviously affect nature going away from the lake, building into that hillside. So I think our contention still is that even in comparing these options, the top and bottom that we're looking at is, that happens to be about the flattest, and in my opinion, least impactful, part of that particular envelope up top, which is why we kind of chose that route.
okay, and the next question, and maybe Amy will have to answer this, the distance from the lake on that particular cabin. You said additional 70-some feet if we place it like that. What is that distance from that placement of that to the lake?
You're wondering about the proposed placement of it within the Bluff impact zone and how far from the lake it would be? Or is that what
From
you're
the
asking?
lake up to the corner of the cabin, which would be on the top of the bluff.
So this scenario
Yes.
is what you're asking?
Oh.
Okay. The survey does not indicate what that is. However, let me get,
It does seem like a significant
it
distance.
is. It more than meets the setback, and so that wasn't a concentration of mine because I knew the setback from the lake was met.
And part of the reason I thought is there's all these hardwoods that are in there, even though it's bluff, and don't like to deal with doing anything in the bluff. You're such a distance away from the lake that is it gonna create an erosion issue if we do allow this? And will any of that get anywhere near the lake?
So, Mr. Chair, let me just. To answer Marv's question, just got to let this load for a second. Here we go. So I'm doing approximate, but we're about a couple hundred feet from the lake at that point.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea of where that would be in proximity to the lake.
Okay, thank you.
There was a question when we were out that day, also about lot sizes, and, you know, as we split these two, in theory, keeping them, and maybe this is worth mentioning too, is purchasing the property as a complete LLC is between us, and then LLC selling back individual lake lots, actually keeping those individual lake lots relatively as small as we can and leaving the rest of it in kind, I guess for the sake of preservation and recreation through the rest of it. But one of the questions, I think, Mr. Chairman, maybe from you was, what were those lot sizes? So since then, my homework went back also to Beacon and did that. I think about the smallest lot size that we could possibly pull out of there is 1.5 acres. In theory, they're gonna be somewhere between 2 and 3 acres each. And then, yeah, roughly, same math, because I have the same lines here, it looks like maybe 276 feet, roughly, is kind of the closest. Even in the compliant scenario on the bottom of the screen, that's about as close as we could get to the lake.
That would be in the property away from the lake you're talking about.
In the second example there, which is compliant, I guess, or which is compliant, that's the closest we could build to the lake, which is still 270 feet away, I think. Then as you push back, further back, and the request that we're making is actually 70 feet further away is what we're mentioning.
So I'm trying to understand the placement of these new cabins or wherever where they would exactly be. I guess I'm a little confused by this.
The top picture is what we're asking for variance
For the
on.
two, yeah, but you had said in the future, you were possibly, I thought that was a comment, wasn't it? Did I miss something?
No.
Acre and a half, or were these properties are
Oh.
acre and a half?
Yeah, well, and so, you know, the ability to split these two, the smallest lot size would be 1.5 acres if we cut it off right at the back bluff. So
Mr. Chair?
I guess I'm just illustrating, it's a pretty big plot of land, even if we were to do that.
Mr. Chair, I think I know what you're asking. So let me so right now, this is what the parcel looks like. Okay? And we allow one dwelling per parcel. On this size, this is a duplex lot size, so what would be allowed is one principal dwelling and then a guest cottage up to 700 square feet, 15 feet tall. Since they're both requesting, they want a full-size cabin larger than that, what they would need to do is split this property, so they're proposing, if this variance goes through, they will purchase this entire property, the LLC will, and then they will execute a land split. So they'll split, you know, depending on kind of how it goes, they'll split, so this will be one parcel, this will be two, and then this third one will be owned by the LLC. This one will be owned by Matt, this one will be owned by Chris. And then they have their own parcel to build the cabin on, their cabins on. Okay?
Which would be the ones that,
Which he's saying the parcel size that they'd be creating with these splits to build their cabins would be between like 1.5 and 3 acres. The rest of it then would be owned in common by the LLC.
okay.
Make
That
sense?
answers that question now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks, Avi. Thanks, Marv. Okay, any other questions? Okay, all right, all ready for public comment?
Just one thing.
Go ahead.
So I think I kind of on the same page as maybe what they're saying. You know, if you look at the other picture where they would put that one down farther in the building envelope compared to up by the bluff that they're proposing, the same water, the same stuff's gonna go to this, if that cabin's down here or up there. I personally, 70 more feet away from the lake, how many people come in here and wanna build something 200 and some feet away from a lake? I understand it's in a bluff and we wanna protect the bluff as much as we can, but way back there, I just think the way the water flows and looking at, you could see in the property, it goes down there. It's gonna be just as much, erosion. There shouldn't be any, but you know, when you're doing some excavation and things like that, you're gonna have a few things and hopefully they take the proper steps to assure that don't happen. But I just think for the future, I don't know, I just like it up higher. I just wanted to say that I agree with what they're proposing as far as moving it from that part of it, just moving it back.
All right, thank you. Any other comments before we go to the public? Okay, public input. State your name for the record.
I'm Travis Grossman with Carilla Real Estate in Nisswa. I just wanted to make a couple comments, if I may. I feel safe after our comments or after the discussion coming into this, being here as a realtor. But
You're safe.
terrific, thank you very much. So I think that we've kind of touched on it, and maybe sometimes it's just different wording, but there's a couple things that are highly unique, and I'm fortunate. I look at a lot of lakeshore property, and you know, I think I'm probably as frustrated as the most frustrated person in this room about scenarios like the last one. Honestly, you've got a difficult job. These guys, the planning that they're putting into this and going through the routes, making a informed decision as a part of the purchase is admirable. And one of the unique things about option the option that they're asking for versus the option down here is this is a really unique bluff from the aspect that we have a place to put water that it naturally wants to go when we build up on the top. And so there's an opportunity to redirect as much runoff, and including the driveway, to go back into the hole that is on the back side of this bluff. If you have a cabin that technically, I mean, it can fit in there within the building envelope, you have no option but to send that water towards the lake. I mean, or we would end up having to create a stormwater management plan that where are we going to put that? So I just think that that's a really, really unique thing, is that we have water placement options when you build up on top. And, it's kind of hard to say, well, why do we need a variance when they could put 2 cabins in that? I do think that honestly, it just makes sense from that perspective. So I'd made a couple of other notes. And going into development of it, to build it, to build that cabin as in the bottom image, just talking about how do you do that? I mean, I know that the goal is to protect the hillside, the bluff, as much as possible. We're talking about probably just a couple of degrees that makes that section not a bluff. No different than this area right here is only considered a bluff by a degree. You know, so that's close. I mean, the initial survey that was done on this with flyover radar in the 90s did not call that whole section out as a bluff. There was about 140 feet going to the lake that wasn't. Just for perspective, I mean, obviously it is. We have new technology. I just think, you know, keeping that bluff stable while trying to construct something there, talking about removing trees and stability of that, it's just another aspect that it's pretty hard to accomplish that, no matter how careful you are. So, thank you for hearing us out here.
Thank you. Any other input? Shannon?
She's gonna prove me wrong.
Again, Shannon Wetstein, Morrison Stormwater Conservation District, District Manager. Good to meet you guys. So just, you know, reviewing this property, I did attend the DRT where the applicants were proposing, you know, the location of the second house and the first meeting, all setbacks, and the second needing the variance. You know, again, this is just experience with hearing applicants come forward with something like this, is looking at the lot. It is 2,000 some feet deep. There is a lot of area on this ginormous parcel. Even if it was split, there's still room to place a second house. You know, this area, again, the bluff setback is there, just like the wetland setback is there, because anytime you're working close to a natural feature that is sensitive, you do have to give it some space because you inevitably encroach, and there will be some erosion just because of the limited nature of the site. The soils are loamy sand in very steep areas, which means construction, you're going to be dealing with sloughing, and you're going to need a good reputable contractor to be very careful and be using all the BMPs you can to stabilize during construction and then after construction, which I'm sure you're working with capable individuals. But again, I guess the point of it is here is reviewing this as a proposal. There is a very large lot. There is plenty of room for one without having to require variance, without having to create a non-conforming property. You guys have seen me present before when the request has been made in a bluff setback or in a bluff. I have always been very much against that proposal. And it seems like all of these bluff areas, you know, they are treed and wooded for obvious reasons because that's probably the best state for them to remain in. Once you start disturbing them, it's very hard to reestablish, and I, you know, most likely would not if there's a house there. So happy to take any questions, but that's my short answer.
Questions, anybody? Yeah, viewing the property, it's hard to imagine that, you know, the southern conforming envelope there for that house. It's hard to imagine that is not a bluff, but I guess it isn't, according to the survey. Looks to me like there's one possible building site, the one for the cabin to the west, you know, one that meets setbacks. But there is the lower one also.
Can I just add, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, the proposal is for the building in the building setback, right? Because God bless you, but one of the most annoying things I deal with in my line of work is when someone's like, well, I could do this and it could be way worse. Or I could do this and then you would have to deal with that. And it's like, yes, you could do that, but really, is that the best possible solution here? Is that really what you want to do, is threaten me? I don't hear you guys doing that tonight, but by presenting that other scenario with a house closer in that, it is kind of nudging at that. You know, this is where we could go. And, I mean, reasonable building, you know, why would you want to build there in the interest of that future property owner? If this were ever dissolved, the LLC splits, you have two property owners, one's right in front and one's right in back of the other. Yeah, it's not ideal as far as a property value is concerned. So, yeah, thank you for not threatening with having some other building scenario. That's all I'll say on that.
Yep, thanks for that perspective. Okay, if there's no further questions, any other public input? Yes, sir, go ahead. State your name for the record.
Hi, is this on? I'm Craig Marcotte, and sort of interested in, I was interested in this property. Travis, you may remember me from last year. We thought we were that close to closing on that property. But my wife and I are in escrow on the adjacent property, the Zeta property, the Zeta Family Revocable Trust. And so I'm here to educate myself, but I'm very interested in this proposal.
Would you hold the mic a little closer?
Sure.
Yep, thank you.
I guess my question is, the driveway to the property, would that be coming from Ridge Road, or would it be going through that slot on Airmore Road, that 60-foot slot?
Yeah, the Armor Road.
Okay.
That narrow section.
Okay, and so that borders the Zeta property?
Right.
Yeah, bounce the questions off me and then I'll get it back to you.
Okay, sorry. So I guess we haven't closed yet. July 8th is the expected closing, and we had hoped to maybe add that property that you're purchasing, but that's not going to happen, I see. So I guess I'm just concerned about the impact of building that road in there.
Okay, thank you. Any other public input? Not much public left. Any other public input at this time? One more time I'll ask. Any other public input? If not, we'll close the meeting to public input. Okay, are we ready for the questions? I'll take that as a yes. Okay. Number one is the request in harmony with the general purposes intent of Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan. We'll start out with Chris, or Clint. Chris, whatever your name is. Please, Clint, would you say?
Okay, Bob.
I deserve more than that. Okay, go ahead, Clint.
It somewhat is, because we allow them to apply for this variance, you know. I'm kind of on both sides of the fence on this one right now. We do have other billing envelope here. But then I can also see why they'd want to put that where that is. I don't know. Probably not the best one to answer this question at this point.
Okay.
I'm still mixed feelings on it.
All right, Marv?
Get from someone else.
Yeah, if you come with another thought, let me know.
Well, right now, I'm kind of on the fence with some of this with Clint. Something that in the past, we view the Bluff as a very sensitive area. we do not want to disturb the bluff. We've had numerous individuals that disturb the bluff have restored it. And why would we want to create a nonconformity in the bluff? Right now, I can see where they're coming from. They have a good plan with the water directing that way, and it's them stating we could place this one lower, the other cabin. And it's just hard to comprehend that because as Clint, Dave, and I made it just hard to comprehend that where it makes more sense having it up higher and the water is going to be naturally flowing that way. But creating a nonconformity, I don't believe that is what is the general purpose of the ordinance in a comprehensive plan. I don't believe it is. And 46 notices are sent, only one negative remark, and that was regarding being in a bluff.
Okay. Brent?
Excuse me, I tend to agree. Having viewed this property last Friday with the others here as well, I appreciate the candid conversations of the realtor and the applicants here regarding their proposal. And it is a unique property, but I'm not sure that it's in harmony with the general purposes of the land use ordinance by creating and building in a bluff. It is unique in that the bluff continues and it ends and it starts again, but standing there on that lot, I think it was very helpful to see that there really isn't all that much difference between one to the other. And you know, I'm a firm believer in the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. Obviously, the letter of the law here is we're not going to continue to allow things to be built in a bluff. The spirit of the law would be, what are we looking at here? And I get where you're coming from, that may be an idea. I'm wondering if there maybe isn't another plan that could actually suit your needs, but this one at this time I don't think is in harmony with the general purposes.
Thank you. Amy, just a couple of quick questions. I think in your staff report, you referred to that property north of the two proposed building sites as a
Yes.
ravine?
No,
No, that's not what's a ravine?
the ravine is this area here that I'm referring to.
Oh, that's the ravine that has the, actually, a
That has a building
building
envelope.
envelope in it.
Yes.
Okay, that area north, that hole, that
Yes.
drop off, very steep. And if they were to come in with a permit for that, building in that area, what, you know, and the road, of course, too. You indicated that there would have to be construction plans to prevent erosion. How are those areas protected if that happens?
So we have our regulations for bluffs, and essentially there's no excavation or no structures from the toe of the bluff up to that 30-foot setback from the bluff. When we have areas that are outside of the bluff but still considered a severe steep slope, then we require engineered plans to build in that area. So if there was a plan, if they did build here, it's considered a severe steep slope because it's only a couple clicks off from being a bluff. And so then there'd be some engineering that would need to be done, and their approach to construction would need to be well thought out in order to build there. When you go onto that backside, it would be the same. It would be the same deal because that drop off is so severe. Even though we're not in a bluff, we're in a severe steep slope, and it's really for the protection of the structure, and then also integrity of the resource. Then
And construction erosion?
Correct. Yep.
And that's true for all properties, not just shoreline?
Generally, well, we deal with this mostly in shoreland, but yes, we're certainly looking at that. But generally, it's shoreland.
Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, yeah, I have nothing to add other than that. Number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? We'll start out with Marv.
Well, I think their intent was reasonable. As Clint stated, I appreciate the honesty of and the comments and the openness about what your plans were between you individuals as a as the realtor also being there. Here, building into the bluff, I don't know when there's other alternatives is probably not reasonable. But the way you propose doing it could be with a lot of conditions. And I don't know if we are with some conditions, I'd say a lot of conditions, with some conditions. And I don't know if we're going to be willing to go down that road with all these conditions, because your road to that would be a real issue and being engineered. And I know we're not dealing with the road at all, but just on this property. And something I want to reiterate is you guys have been fantastic to work with, but this variance will be granted to the property, not to you. And if this ever would be sold or anything, this could create an issue. That's why we have to be very careful with this.
Okay. Brent, anything to add?
I think Marv's covered that.
Okay. Yeah, reasonable and permittable. I guess we got two terms here that are a little bit in conflict with each other. Building in the ravine is permittable, but is it reasonable? I guess you guys don't really think so, and probably none of us do either. But you could get an over-the-counter permit with engineered designs. The one dwelling that is permittable up on top of the bluff out of the bluff impact zone is permittable and possibly reasonable. We got to think about the road to get there. And the other one that you're requesting the variance for is not reasonable nor permittable. Not reasonable in that it does not meet it's not in harmony with the intent of the ordinance. Better than the other one, possibly. Better than the ravine alternative, but that's not the business we're in of trading up. We're in the business of the intent of the ordinance. So I feel this is an unreasonable request. Clint?
Nothing to add.
Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Brent, we'll start with you.
I think it does. In that you can't really see these proposed building sites from the lake. You can't really see them from the road. The driveway getting in there is going to be pretty unique, rural and winding through the switchback, if you will, trying to get back there the way they proposed that. So maintaining the essential character of locality, I don't know if I had that right, was it 30 plus acres total?
29.6.
Okay, I'm sorry, 29.6. Placing 2 homes in that, in any other shoreland district would be, desired to have that much land. However, this land is so unique that it's just that small point in all directions where everything has to converge. So, but maintaining the essential character, I think it does. It's going to stay wooded. It looks wooded now. It will stay wooded. I guess that's all I've got to say.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add to that is the essential character of the locality now is undeveloped. Can't get better than that, in my opinion. But, if this were all done and I were to visit it after it were all done and healed up and I hadn't seen all those nice trees and everything fit in well, I'm pretty sure I'd appreciate the beauty of it, and it would be a unique place to live and have character consistent with shoreland property. So I'm not sure if that's an answer. That's an observation. Clint, anything to add?
No, I agree with what you and Brent said. You'll never even know it's there. If that's essential, it isn't gonna be the character of their neighborhood per se,
Yeah.
but it does, maintain the essential character.
Marv, anything to add?
I agree with what the rest of the board members stated here, so.
Okay, and number 4 is alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property. It's a unique property, but there's really no practical difficulty. It's a bluff. We don't allow building within the bluff impact zone. The alleged practical difficulty is trading one site for another site, that it might be less impactful on the environment, that doesn't really make a practical difficulty either. It makes an interesting observation and an interesting proposal, but that's all it does. Clint?
I kind of agree with what you said. If you're gonna look for practical difficulty, it could be that, without our technology, with our eyes, none of us could tell the difference of what was out there, right? Here it's a bluff, there it's not, here it is. You'd never know it without our technology that we have. But yeah, I'd kind of have to agree with what you said, Dave.
Marv?
Something as previous, we know that we're talking about the issues on Chamina Lake and why these issues were created, or a good share of them were man-created. And now because of technology, we are more environmentalists looking for the future. How can we protect what is best for this property? And here we've made some mistakes in the past, and going forward, how do we to stop creating more problems for that lake in the future? Even though this is such a small piece, it is a piece of the pie that could create a problem. Very small, but it's just that little piece.
Brent, anything to add?
Nothing further.
Okay. Number 5 is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowner. Clint?
I guess I can't find one, so. There's a building envelope. They want to build a little bit into the Bluff impact zone. Could move it over to a different site. The only other thing other than the landowner or prior landowners would just be the topographic of the land.
Okay. Marv?
I really don't see a huge practical difficulty because there is building envelopes here, and it's just the placement of where they want to put it. And I don't blame them, because then they might get a little bit of a view of the lake, and just the placement of that is creating it.
And Brent?
Yeah, I don't think that the need for the variance is created by anybody other than the proposed. And it certainly isn't by the landowner, because it's currently not owned by you. It's in a purchase agreement, so it isn't by them. Prior landowners maybe created this land with that sliver in the area for a road or a driveway to go out at one time when it was platted, so it's very suitable for building. It might not be suited for, just the way you want to do it, but it certainly is suited for that. But I think the desire to place the two homes in the area is certainly just created by the request.
Okay, I have nothing to add. Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Oh, much more, but economics is the huge portion because of the placement of cabins and how they're going to do it is probably financially, they're splitting this up equally and creating it. So they're probably worth about the same value doing this here. Thinking about the direction of water flow, thinking about possible more erosion and flowing, it sounded like just the comments that were made, they were thinking about it. So I believe they're thinking about much more than just an economics. It's just a small piece of it.
Brent?
Just to add on that, yeah, certainly there's costs associated here for this, but there's drainage, there's elevation, the lot splits, the bluffs, there's many things that are above and beyond just the economics.
Yes, certainly the dividing the costs of the road and developing that site is about economics. And it's possibly, other development off of that road in the future too. So maybe it is all about economics, though I think it's more boiled down today to the site selection the possible site selections that they have rather than economics. Clint?
I'm gonna agree with Marvin, Brent, and disagree with you. That's my comment.
My wife does that all the time. All right, are we ready to vote? Everybody's ready to vote. No other input on the 6 questions?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment. As proposed buyers and all, we're sitting up here as like a jury trying to digest everything coming our way and looking towards what's best for the county, what's best for the future of that property. I hope you understand that, and it's not always easy being up here in some of our votes that way because we have to digest all that before we vote.
Okay, we'll proceed with the vote. Is the request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Starting with Clint.
Yes.
Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Myself is no. Clint?
No.
Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
Is number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Clint?
No.
Marv?
No.
Brent?
I guess I'm going to answer that based upon my comments as yes, because they aren't technically the landowners.
Okay. And myself is no. Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Clint?
Yes.
Okay, 4 out of the 5?
4 out of the 6.
Out of the 6, yeah. Well, 4 out of 6 have been answered to the negative. So is there a motion to deny this variance request? I move that we deny this request to construct a dwelling within the Bluff impact zone.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion was made and seconded. Any discussion on it? If no discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye, all opposed say nay. Marv?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Myself is aye. And Clint?
Aye.
Motion carries. Your variance request has been denied. Well, again, thank you for all of the information, the tour.
about this. It's tough.
Good luck moving forward with it. Okay, next on the agenda is, I'm not even sure what. Is it minutes of the previous meeting?
Yes.
Those were awful short minutes for a 2.5-hour meeting. I don't know, but I guess they're okay. I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Minutes accepted as presented. Old business,
I don't think I've got any, Mr. Chair. And I don't think I have any new business either, just to say that next month, we do have a pretty full agenda, and they're sticky. So just make sure that you're read your packet and are ready to go.
how many, we've got,
There's one planning commission item, 3 variance items,
yep, and that's on
the 28th,
28th,
correct.
okay? And how's July looking?
I don't think we've got it. We have one for, the 19th of July is our first meeting in July. So we do have one item already for that one.
It's your only meeting in July, I think.
Well, yeah, because we got 3 in August. We follow the county board schedules.
Perfect. I'm so busy in August.
Okay,
But that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
all right, no new business, anybody? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned at 8:06.